Hey guys, I'm Keith Carson, MLF Pro, and today we're going to talk about sight fishing. All right guys, so getting into what to look for when the fish are starting to spawn. The first major thing that you want to look for is water temperature. The moon has a role in it, but water temperature trumps whatever the moon is doing all the time. I can promise you that. And so you want to be looking for a warming trend. If there was a cold front, a deep cold front before earlier, that's awesome. And when that water hits 60 degrees and it's on the warming trend, that's when you want to start looking for beds. I've seen them on the bed in 55, 56 degree water temperature, but that's not prime time. That 60 degree, 62 is ideal. 62 to 68 degrees is the ideal range that you want to see bedfish. And some of the things that you're going to want to look for is, first and foremost, obviously clean water. You want to find the part of the lake that has the cleanest water where you can see the bottom. And then also, you're going to want to look at the wind forecast. You know, you don't want to be on the windy part of the lake. Preferably, if you can be in canals that are protected from wind, that's one of the best things to look for. If you're looking on the main lake, you're going to want to be on the calm side of the lake that also has clean water. And you know, basically, you're gonna put your trolling motor on, and you're gonna look for beds. And the way I like to do it is I like to move relatively fast, because what that does is it spooks the fish. And I personally like to spook them because they're easier to see. The fish that are on a bed and never move are the hardest fish to see, because you know, they just don't catch your eye. They're down there. They're camouflaged with the structure. They're really good at hiding. And the beds aren't always obvious. They're not always bright white. Sometimes they're black beds. Sometimes they're spawning on mucky bottom here in Florida. I like to move kind of fast. I like to spook the fish, because then I can see where he came from, drop a waypoint, mentally make a note of what it was on, and then I can turn the boat around and ease up to that fish and start to fish for it. So we need to go through, you know, rod setups, because this is very important to make sure that you're putting these fish in the boat. When you're using a spinning rod, what I like to use is something light, you know, something that has a lot of bend to it. You're often close to these fish. And so when you're close to them, you know, you want a rod that gives. So if you have a rod that's too stiff, you know, what happens is when you set the hook, it creates a hole that's too big in their mouth. And then when they jump, the hook just falls out. It doesn't use the barb on that hook properly. You want that hook to just penetrate their skin gently, but not so much that it makes a big hole in their mouth. And that's going to increase your catch ratio tremendously. I can't tell you how big of a deal that is. For my spinning setup for bed fishing right here, I got a world-class 7.2 medium light. This is actually a walleye rod because it has a little bit more backbone than a typical bass 7.2 medium light. You know, if you like these Fenwick rods, they have a whole line of rods, all the way from cheaper rods to more expensive like the world-class. But you want that limber kind of 7.2 medium light. For my setup here, where I've got 20-pound mono, this is for fish that are in structure, you know, that could wrap you up or you would need to pull them out to open water quickly. This rod here is a 7.5 medium heavy extra fast. And this medium heavy, it just has that give that you need. Like I said, you know, if I went with a heavy action, I'm gonna lose more fish with a heavy action than I would with a medium heavy on that setup. And same thing here with my straight braid setup. This is fish that could be closer to structure where I need to get them out, but maybe they're difficult to bite. And so, you know, when you need to use this little crawl to get them to bite, a lot of times, if you can't get a fish to bite, you have to take your chance. Like if you don't get them to bite, you're never gonna catch them anyways. So sometimes even if they're near structure and I need to downsize to a tiny little bait to get them to bite, I'm increasing my chance to lose them if they're near structure. But you know, it's better to have them bite and lose them than to not get them to bite at all. So sometimes that's why you gotta go through that setup. So this is again, 7.2 medium light walleye rod. This one's the straight braid one. I can pull a little bit harder with the 8-pound braid, straight braid than I can with a leader. And this 8 really is an 8. I'm gonna say this is more like 15 to 20. This is really strong stuff, impressive. So that's my basic setup for bed fishing. And even if I had multiple of these rigged up, it's gonna be the same rod. I mean, that's all you need, 7.5 medium heavy, and same setup. I can have 10 of these rods, but it's gonna be these two models, 5 and 5, whatever. So we're gonna go through some of the setups for different scenarios based on how the fish are positioned on the beds and the type of structure that they're around. So first and foremost, we're gonna start with the basic, excellent bed fishing bait. This is going to be your 5-inch stick bait. My favorite color I've got here, this is a 5-inch baby bass general. This is my favorite size and everything. And you're gonna put this on a spinning rod with, you know, some leader, 8-10 pound test is fine, with a nice little open hook. And you're just gonna hook that thing right in the middle, just like that. So when it falls, it will have that kind of an action to it. Now, this specific setup, when you're throwing this, that fish that's on the bed that you're targeting, it needs to not really be around structure. You know, if it's around like lily pads or reeds or anything like that, there's a really good chance that you're gonna get wrapped up and hung up and you're gonna lose the fish. And so this needs to be more of an open water or out off of structure, maybe on seawalls, something like that. But this is an excellent, excellent bait to use. So for fish that are more around structure, more in, you know, sawgrass, cattails, pads, things like that, what I do is I rig up 20-pound mono. I like mono because it floats. Fluorocarbon sinks. Depending on how you want to work the bait, you can use fluorocarbon, but if you want to lift the bait up, what happens is with fluorocarbon, it's on the bottom, so when you go to lift the bait up, the bait doesn't actually come up, it just drags vertically across the bed. You need monofilament if you want to do hops and try to hop the bait around. If the bed is around structure, what I rig up is, here we got, this is an all new Berkeley stank bug. This thing's max scent, which fish on the bed love. I pair it with a 3/16 ounce weight, and I've got a 5/0 round bend hook here. And this is what you're gonna use when you are, you know, when the fish are around structure and they can wrap you up in something. You want a closed hook where it's Texas rig style, and you can pitch on the bed and shake it and try to trigger strikes that way. If the fish are really spooky and hard to catch, I rig up a Berkeley little Super Trooper here, and I use a small bait with an 1/8 ounce weight. This is straight braid. This is 8-pound fire line. This is my actual setup. All of these are my actual setup from bed fishing on Harris Chain last week on Bass Pro Tour. This gets fish to bite that won't bite anything else. They will suck this thing in really quickly. It's pretty amazing, actually. Excellent little setup there. These are the 3 main setups that you need for bed fishing, for whatever it is that the conditions present to you, and you know, how the fish are sitting. You know, these are decisions that you have to make on the fly. You might catch one fish on a wacky rig general that's out in the open, and your very next fish you might catch on a stank bug or crawl, you know, with a closed hook Texas rig style. All right, guys, so to go through some of my favorite colors, when you're in clear water, typically I like those lighter colors, that baby bass, that watermelon seed, you know, those kind of colors. Now, if you're new to bed fishing, you can use something white. You could put on a white crawl or a white general or whatever, which visually helps you see where your bait is at. If you've done it for a while, you're more intermediate to advanced, you'll know that white is not the color to use. Fish don't bite the white quickly. They like stuff that's more like, this is green pumpkin blue, this is one of my favorite colors, and they bite this much faster than white. You're gonna have a lot quicker catch rate and much more success with a color that matches the structure that you're around. And so for me, baby bass is awesome. You know, this is my number one color. I like green pumpkin a lot on my crawls. You can get into black and blue and stuff, and they eat that really well also. Understand that you're not going to be able to see this bait on the bed very well at all. Often, I actually can't see my bait whatsoever. I just kind of know where my bait's at by how I pitch. I look at the fish and I see the behavior of it, how it's reacting. What is it doing? And I can tell where my bait's at by how the fish is swimming on the bed. And of course, obviously, if the fish is nosing down, then I know it's nosing down right on my bait, and that's obvious. But Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, if you're new, start out with white, you know, you see where you're pitching, how, you know, what's going on, and then, you know, switch to these darker colors. You're going to find that they bite it much quicker. And yeah, I mean, that's my basic color scenario is pretty simple. Baby bass, green pumpkin, black and blue. That's kind of all you need to know. Something else that we need to talk about when you're sight fishing is you need a good pair of polarized glasses, and you need to go through the lens color. So, you know, often as a sight fisherman, I hear guys say, hey, I like black and blue lenses, and some guy says, I like copper lenses, and I like amber lenses, you know. And for me, I personally like amber lenses, but each one of us sees things differently. We all have different color eyes, and each of us allows light in differently than the next person. So you might have one guy who sees best with dark colored lenses, and then you might have someone with me who likes really light lenses. And I have light eyes, I have green hazel eyes, and so I like these really light lenses. It just allows so much light in that I can see in the water. They have to be polarized. They don't have to be the most expensive pair. When I started out sight fishing, I started off with a pair of Berkeley polarized glasses. They were $9.99. I won a lot of sight fishing tournaments with a $9 pair of glasses. You don't need a $300 pair, I promise you that. It helps, they're better, but it's not necessary. Finding the right lens is what's necessary. If you need to go and buy every lens of these cheaper $10 pair of glasses, do it. Put them on in different lights, put them on in sunlight and cloud cover like we have now. Try different lenses, see what works best for you, because seeing these fish is obviously the most important thing. You have to be able to see the beds and see the fish to catch them. If you can't see, you're not going to like bed fishing very much at all. That may be one of the best tips of this whole video, actually. You know, get the right lenses and figure out what works for you, and then start bed fishing. I want to talk a little bit about boat positioning. This is one of the most important things when it comes to bed fishing. So when I'm visually trying to find the bass, I'm on the trolling motor moving relatively quick because I want to spook them off so I can see where they came from and then go find the bed. But when you decide that you picked out a fish and you like its behavior and it seems like it's aggressive enough to catch, you want to position the boat as far away as you can still see the bed. You don't want to be on top of them. Maybe if you're new to bed fishing and you're starting out, you're going to get on top of it. You're going to get close and see what it does. I can tell you that that makes the fish extremely difficult to catch. You want to be as far away from the bed as you possibly can, where you can barely see the outline of the bed. And that's just for the purpose so you know where to cast. And often, you know, you'll see guys like me or other bed fishermen where we stand on top of our trolling motor when the trolling motor is in the down position, because when I'm on the deck, I can't really see the bed. And when I stand on top of my trolling motor, I gain that extra few inches, and that's just enough to where I can see the outline of the bed. Being as far away as possible will make this whole process much easier on you, for sure. Like that's a huge tip. Often in bed fishing, when you have a male and a female on the bed, you're targeting the female. That's the big fish. That's the one you want to catch. When you pitch to the fish, if the male bites it, you want to shake him off. You don't want to set the hook. Sometimes you can catch the male and then you can pitch in and catch the female, but I can tell you that you have about 2 to 5 minutes to catch that female if you've caught the buck, and that's it. And then she's usually gone. That's like a typical thing that happens. So you want to get the male fired up and get him biting. That helps a lot, because what happens is when you keep shaking him off, sometimes it takes 20, 30 tries, she'll get so frustrated where she kind of thinks to the male like, hey, you're not doing your job, you're not protecting this bed, so I'm gonna eat this bait because you can't take care of it. And then she'll eat it, and then you catch the female. After you catch her, then you can pitch in and catch the male the very next cast often if you want to. But that's like a really big tip for bed fishing. Targeting those females, you know, those are the ones you want, and that's how, if you're in a tournament scenario, you know, that's how you get to having a giant 5-fish limit, is by getting those females to bite first. That's like a huge tip that I could tell you. Stay away, you know, position the boat correctly, hide the boat if you can. If you're able to hide the boat behind a dock, get in some sawgrass, get in some cattails to where the fish completely forget that you're even there. Power pole down. You know, shut off your electronics. You don't want forward sonar on. You don't want that stuff pinging on them. You want to be stealth-like. You want to be silent. You want to make it so that these fish do not know that you're there, and that's going to increase the amount of time that it takes to get a bite, and it's going to make this whole process a lot easier for you. It can be easy to overthink this whole bed fishing thing, and it can be really tough at times. Even for, you know, veterans like me, I have a hard time sometimes. But, you know, the main thing is to make sure you got a good pair of sunglasses, that you're in clean water, that you're out of the wind. Hopefully you're on a warming trend, and, you know, go out, have fun, actually. You know, that's probably the main thing. Make sure you're having a good time. If you're not enjoying it, then maybe bed fishing's not for you, and that's fine. There's plenty of excellent anglers out there who don't like to bed fish whatsoever. So hopefully follow these rules, and this should help you catch a few more fish. This is how I actually got into fishing, was sight fishing, growing up near Gemini Springs. Loved it. You know, it just really got me interested in it. Follow these steps. It's going to get you guys into something. You're going to learn a new tactic, and hopefully be catching some giants soon.